So welcome, Fiona. Thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you for asking me, Francis.
Great. And so I'll just introduce Fiona to begin with, and myself briefly. So I'm Frances Goodall from the Women's Wellness Circle, which you can find out more about at womenswellnesscircle.com, and also my personal website is francesgoodall.com. And today I'm interviewing Fiona. And Fiona is a yoga teacher and the author of Beat Fatigue with Yoga, and also Endless Energy. Fiona became ill with chronic fatigue syndrome in 1992 after running a busy and stressful PR agency. She was hospitalised for 3 months and was in a wheelchair for a further 2 years. And Fiona set up training courses on stress, burnout, and ME, and also ran retreats for people with chronic health challenges for many years, I guess. And Fiona is currently working on a new book called Yoga Therapy for Stress, Exhaustion, and Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. So just to begin with, Fiona, I just to express some gratitude. I know that when I was recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome myself in my early 20s, your book was an inspiration for me, and discovering yoga was an inspiration, and discovering a more sort of restorative way of doing yoga was very helpful, and I was inspired by reading your book. So maybe you could just briefly talk a little bit about your recovery journey from ME and how yoga helped you.
Well, I think I was a typical kind of type A person. Very often we are the type of people who get ME or chronic fatigue syndrome. Yeah. So I was running on cortisol. I was in my sympathetic nervous system mode. I was always working. And it was very much, I think that's still very much the culture, this kind of energy of you have to be seen to be doing all the time.
Yeah.
So to try to be any different wasn't something that had occurred to me, but it was always like I had to get very ill before I learned my lessons. And I did get very ill. I was in a wheelchair and I was hospitalised for 3 months. And I was approached by a yoga teacher in about 1992. Her name was Angela Stevens, and she said that she'd come across a lot of people with ME, and she was thinking of setting up a group. Would I be interested in coming to a special yoga group? So I went to her group, and I was completely blown away because it was so slow and gentle, but it also was very profound. It was like I kind of, for the first time, became very aware of a sense of myself, which I had never had before. So that, the relaxation was a revelation to me, and then also learning to come home to my body, because I then realised, or over a period of time, that I had been very detached from my body for years and years. So for me, yoga was about coming home to my body and learning to still the mind. So all of that really contributed. There were many things really that helped me to get better, but yoga was a huge part of that journey.
Yeah, and that's wonderful to hear. And yeah, it was definitely a big part of mine, as well as learning to come more into my body and into my emotions, my feeling body, and everything. So thank you. And in terms of someone who's chronically unwell and maybe the extreme, they've maybe been bedbound for a while, or have very limited sort of movement initially, how would you say to sort of gently ease into yoga? Like, what are the kind of methods or ways of doing the postures that might be adapted and that sort of thing to someone with chronic health problems?
Well, when we talk about yoga, I think a lot of people with chronic health problems can get quite scared because they think, oh, that's about doing strong gymnastics or difficult postures. But the true yoga that we're talking about here isn't about that. So it's about being very gentle. It's about the emphasis is on learning to breathe properly, learning to relax, learning to be still. So if somebody's really ill and they're bedbound, I would probably just start with breathing exercises, which is known as pranayama. So very simple things like learning to breathe through the nose and learning to extend the exhalation to calm the central nervous system down would be a starting point. And then just very gentle stretching. So stretching out the body just to maybe get the toxins moving a bit, because when we've been ill and we're bedbound or housebound, we don't move around a lot. And of course, the body loves to move, but we have to start to build that up very slowly. So the way to start is to start very, very gently. Maybe just doing, a couple of postures a day and not holding them for very long. Just a couple of stretches.
Yes, absolutely. And perhaps quite a lot of the relaxation. I've just been at a festival actually, and I enjoyed the yoga nidra to catch up with some rest after being up late. I mean, do you recommend things like yoga nidra as well, or like deep relaxation at the end? Or
I personally do a yoga nidra myself every afternoon. I think it's absolutely key for health.
Yeah.
I don't know what yoga nidra means. Nidra is a Sanskrit word meaning sleep. So it's a form of very deep relaxation. It's a bit more profound than that actually, because but I kind of won't go into the philosophy behind it, but for the intents and purposes of this talk that we're having between us, it is a very deep relaxation.
Yes.
And for anyone with a health problem, to relax deeply is the most healing, nourishing thing that we can do. It puts our body back in the state where it can recover.
Yes.
So I think to do a yoga nidra or a form of deep relaxation is really important, and anyone I work with, I encourage them to do a yoga nidra daily.
Yeah, and it's amazing as well online. There's amazing resources, isn't there, where you can even download yoga.
There's a whole website.
Yeah.
It's a UK one, and I mean, if you Google it will come up.
Yeah.
They're free. So there are lots and lots of yoga nidras that are out there. There's also somebody actually who I use that I'd recommend. And just as I'm saying that, her name's gone out.
Uma, is it Uma? Doesn't it?
And she does something called Dare to Rest.
Okay, Karen Brody. Yeah, we interviewed her in our council recently. Yeah, so great. Yeah.
I think her yoga nidras are brilliant.
Okay, brilliant.
I've actually, you buy them. I bought, I think it was $30, and I bought 6 of them. And then, I really rate her. She's fantastic. Somebody else who I think is very good is Richard Miller.
Yeah.
He works a lot with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
And you can find him on Sounds True website. But there are some very good yoga nidras.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And I know you've also written about how burnout, stress and illness can be an initiation into a spiritual awakening. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit how women maybe could start to see illness in this kind of way, and sort of, what are the sort of, I was going to say the benefits, or what, how you can grow through illness and how it can be a calling to awaken and grow in on many levels.
Well, I think, it's very hard that when we are chronically ill, it's very tempting. It's very normal to be very angry and depressed and, to find it really hard. But I think if we can find some kind of meaning or purpose behind it, and, for me, I definitely believe that there is meaning and purpose. I think there's something greater than ourselves that's going on here. We're not really in control. And I think when we get ill, we are getting ill for a reason, and that's to teach us something. Now, it might be that we need to learn to have a different lifestyle, or that we're not living from our true heart, or that we need to sit down. But I also believe that there is a huge awakening going on the planet at the moment. There's so much going on at a global level, that there is definitely the idea of awakening or enlightenment or freedom, knowing who you really are, is becoming like a mainstream calling, really. So, but unfortunately, to get there, for many of us, the route is through suffering, because it comes about by realizing that kind of the material world is not going to make us happy, not on a permanent basis anyway, and that while we're very concerned with the material world, we're constantly chasing happiness, and it's just not working. So really what I'm talking about is finding out what your true identity is, that you are something other than the ego or the identities that we make. And I think illness can be a bridge to helping us to be still and peaceful, and to begin to awaken to our true nature. I'm not sure if I put that very well, but
no, I love it. And it was definitely a big part of my journey, was to have kind of awakenings and sort of spiritual openings, and it felt like I wouldn't have taken that path, or not so deeply, had I not gotten well in the first place. And I definitely know that many people I work with have those kind of experiences as well, and also people who've had trauma, often as they start to heal, they can start to sort of awaken. It's like there's so much life force energy bound up in trauma that when it starts to heal and release, it can kind of also kind of initiate awakening as well. So
if we have trauma, that will create tensions and blocks in the body. in yoga. In Sanskrit, we call those grunties.
Yeah.
So they're like, you know, even at chakra level or the physical level, if you like, that there's a kind of knot going on. It might be emotional, it might be physical.
Yeah.
When trauma or that release starts to happen through yoga, and you know, then all kinds of energy can begin to happen.
Yes.
And I also, like you, I've had the experiences as a yoga teacher of people having awakening experiences. When I say experiences, they don't tend to last, but you know, they'll have some kind of almost some experience that's beyond human explanation. And people either then go with that, and that's something that then they want to examine and explore that further, or some of them turn away from it and, you know, they're not interested. I think if you have an awakening experience, it is a kind of calling to you to maybe explore that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in terms of the blocks that maybe, or kind of knots in the body people might have to work through, and one of the things you mentioned just then was emotions, and I know that, you know, you feel that emotional healing is an important aspect of healing physically, and maybe for any human being to do emotional healing work. Maybe you could talk a little bit about emotional healing, what that is.
Well, I mean, a lot of this is from my own experience, but I think for many of us, we live in a society where we tend not to face or deal with our feelings or our emotions because we are brought up to not explore them. We're brought up to get on with things or to push things aside, or if something's painful in particular, you know, we either go to the pub or we go and watch a film or we go shopping or whatever our kind of choice of drug is. We do everything to distract ourselves from the more uncomfortable emotions. And the problem is that if we have something which is upsetting or traumatic, we're then blocking it. And that's then held at a very deep tissue level. And it will eventually cause us to become ill. And unless we're willing to deal with that and face that, that is then held in memory in, you know, the very tissues and cells of the body. Something that happens or can happen if you have the right yoga teacher is that as you become still, and you know, as you become present, some of these emotions will rise up, and some of them will be very unpleasant because it might be grief, it might be anger, it might be fear, it might be anxiety, it might be resentment. But what we are encouraging, or a good yoga teacher is encouraging somebody to do, is to not act that emotion out, but not to repress it. So in other words, you're sitting with it, you're not going into the story in your head, but you're feeling it in the body purely as a body sensation. And in that way, you're kind of liberating that emotion. And I know for myself, I had years and years, I used to be in a very abusive marriage, and I had years and years when I wasn't able to cry, and everything was very blocked. And I used to use kind of humour and being polite as my way of keeping that all under control. And when I kind of made the resolution that I wanted to start to feel again, I spent a lot of time crying because, you know, this kind of great sense of grief and anxiety would come up. Whenever it did, I would go and sit in meditation and just allow my body to feel it. And it's not easy, but, you know, that is part of getting well, is allowing ourselves to unlock these emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a key for me, and I just see that a lot in my work as well with people.
If somebody's had trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, they should actually work with an expert, not work that you should do on your own.
Absolutely, yeah.
You traumatize yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a lot of work now around trauma is working on a very physical level. So, you know, a lot of the experts like Dr. Peter Levine and Dr. Pat Ogden are talking about body experiencing to deal with trauma, but it still is something that really needs to be done in conjunction with an expert.
Yeah, in a safe container, and in a safe space to do that kind of work and to unlock those kind of things. Yeah, and there is levels we can go to ourselves, but it maybe takes a level of having that inner container and being strong enough. But it's much more powerful when it's held in a safe space with somebody else, or even in a group, in an appropriate sort of group environment as well, potentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I know that you have, you talk about boundaries in your work a little bit, or you're quite, interested in boundaries for yourself, maybe in your life now, but also from your healing journey. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how boundaries are important and how they can help us to heal and having good boundaries.
Yeah, very interesting experience about 5 or 6 years ago, and about kind of 6 things happened to me at once or around the same time. And one was that I had an infestation in my house of bed bugs. I also had a tick bite. I also had a very bad relationship with a particular man where, you know, in hindsight, he was kind of coming in and sucking all my energy from me, and was like a bit of a parasite to me. And I had the same with a couple of relationships with women friends as well. And I was in my head thinking, what's going on here? You know, it's like the universe is trying to tell me something. And I also then read a book which I thoroughly recommend. I don't know if you've come across Dr. Gabor Mate.
Oh, I love him. Yeah.
The Body Says No. And he writes a lot about chronic illness. He gives a lot of science to back his work up. But one of the things he says is that one of the keys of being well is how our boundaries are. And he talks about how this can be set up in our childhood, that if we have poor attachment issues, our immune system might develop in a way where it's not kind of boundaried enough, it's not protecting us enough. And that kind of manifests on all levels. So it manifests in our immunity, in our personal relationships, physical health, you know, all levels, mind and body and spirit. So again, for me, part of my journey has been very much looking at my relationships with people, seeing that I'm a people pleaser and that I'm too open, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's a question of balance. It's a question of knowing when to be open, but knowing when to say no as well. So for myself, in my own healing, I've been doing a lot of boundary work. Interestingly, I was just mentioning Dr. Peter Levine, and he has a book called Healing Trauma. And with that book comes a free CD. And I you know, a few years ago, I was doing this, playing the CD. One of his exercises is that you get a piece of string and you put it around yourself where you feel your boundary is. And that's actually really powerful exercise, because so many of us don't have boundaries and we allow people to take from us. And you know, we might make the mistake of having friends who are energy vampires, who drain us rather than give us energy. So all these kind of relationships, I think, need to be questioned. And it's no good just blaming the friend or blaming the family or whatever it is. We also have to look at ourselves and where we set our boundary and how we say no.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and remembering, I was doing a workshop at the festival actually around how, like, when you're saying no, you're saying yes to something else. You're saying yes to yourself or your own needs. You know, it's a yes as well as a no.
Yes. Yeah. And it's, so therefore, I mean, just based on what you said, it then becomes about honouring yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I had a very interesting experience, because for me, we're always on the journey. And I was brought up very much that you do your duty to everyone else. You don't count as a person. And that was kind of my mother, who was brought up, I suppose, in the 1940s and 1950s. And recently I had an experience with my husband, who has cancer, and he's very ill. And I went to my mother to have a break, and she said, well, you've got to go back because it's your duty. And actually I was burnt out. And I said to her, well, no, because I count too. And she was like, no, you don't. Only he counts. You have to do your duty. And I think at that point for me, I then realised almost like the root of where my conditioning and my patterning had been over the years, because my mother, who I love dearly, was kind of giving me the message, which she believed very much herself, which is that we don't count, women, we don't count, we have to do our duty and serve others. And yes, of course, serving others is very important. Life should be about service, but within that has to be serving ourselves too. And we have to honour ourselves, because we count too, because if we're not honouring and looking after ourselves, we can't then serve. And we can't serve anyway unless we're resourced ourselves. So yeah. So, you know, and I'm sure a lot of the work you're doing, Frances, is in learning, helping people to have self-acceptance and self-respect. I don't like the word self-esteem so much, because I think that can kind of then go into the narcissistic range. And, you know, it's always a fine line. But it is a question of nurturing ourselves and realizing that we can.
Yes.
We're part of life just as much as the trees and the flowers.
Absolutely, and then having compassion towards ourselves, and
and treating ourselves like we would treat a beloved friend.
Yeah. Okay, so I know there's so many more things we could go on and talk about, and it'd be very interesting. And we've limited time right now, so if we could move over to a little practice, maybe just a 5-minute practice, that would be great. Is that okay?
Yeah. So we were chatting before we started this call about maybe doing a meditation.
Yeah. Yes.
What I wanted to do today, I was thinking of doing a meditation for coming into the body, and the reason being that in my experience as a yoga teacher, so many people with chronic illness are not really engaged in their body, are kind of like 5 feet outside somewhere, and it might be because the body is not a particularly pleasant place to be. So what I'd like you to do for this is to find a comfortable position. So you can either sit comfortably with your back upright and your head, your neck and your spine in line, your shoulders released, or if it's more comfortable for you, you can lie down. So just take a moment or two to settle, and then you can close your eyes, because that just helps to disengage from the external world. And just take a moment or two to connect with your body. So if you're sitting, really feel your feet in connection with the floor, and feel your sit bones on the chair. So feel your sit bones really heavy. It's like gravity is bringing them down. And become aware of anywhere that you might be touching your support. So if you're lying, you might feel where you're touching the floor. And if you're sitting, just feel where you're touching your chair and where there are spaces. And then become aware of how your head feels, your neck. Release the jaw. Relax the shoulders. And allow the feeling of gravity to sink you down towards the earth. You feel very connected with the earth. And just spend a moment or two thinking about how you're feeling now, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And it might be that your body feels quite nice at the moment. And if it does, that's fine. Just witness that, looking with curiosity. Or it might be that your body has got pain, or it's feeling tired or exhausted. However it is, just witness that with acceptance. And then become aware of your breath. And just allow the breathing to slow down. And if you can, try to breathe through your nose. So you're inhaling through the nose, exhaling. And then if it's comfortable for you, we're going to give you a breathing rhythm. So I'd like you to breathe slowly for a count of 4 and exhale slowly through the nose for a count of 6. So your exhale is slightly longer than your inhalation. Just take a few moments breathing like that, focusing on the exhalation, focusing on the pause after the exhalation. And you might like to become aware where in the body you're feeling the breath. Are you feeling it in the nostrils? Or are you feeling it in the upper chest? Or are you feeling it in the belly? And any time, if you're not feeling comfortable, do feel that you can open your eyes again. And then we're just going to work on an emotion as we've just been talking about that. So I'd like you, with your eyes closed, just to think about something that might have been difficult for you in the last week. And it's probably best to not choose anything that's too traumatic. But maybe you had a conversation with somebody that upset you, or you had a phone call or an email that made you feel a bit uncomfortable. So I'd like you, with your eyes closed, just to focus on that feeling. And remember that any time you want to, you can take yourself away from that feeling just by bringing your presence and your attention into your eyes, into your hands. So we're going to use our hands as a resource to bring our awareness back away from the unpleasant feeling if it becomes overwhelming. While you think about this event and this feeling, I'd like you just to work out where you feel it in the body. So maybe you feel it as tightness in your chest, maybe you feel it butterflies in the stomach. And try not to go into the story, but just try to focus on the feeling in the body. And see if you can feel that emotion as maybe a shape. Is it jagged or is it soft? Is it vibrating or is it still? Does it have a texture to it? Does it maybe have a colour? And then this feeling that you're working with, just imagine that this feeling is like a small child and you're holding it and bringing love and awareness to it. You're just allowing that feeling in the body without going into the story, but just allowing yourself to love and nurture and accept it as part of you. So it's not a part of you that you want to shut off, it's part of you that you want to welcome. And anytime you feel uncomfortable, just bring yourself back to palms of the hands or the breath, using that as your safe resource. And returning now to the breath, just focusing on the exhalation. And bringing the awareness back into the body now. Just become aware of where you're sitting or lying again. Start to extend your senses so that you're hearing anything in the room, anything outside the room. Becoming aware of sensation of your skin on your support. Become aware of the taste in your mouth. And then when you're ready, please open your eyes. Just to wake yourself up a bit, you can rub palms of your hands together, place them over your eyes, and shake out your fingers. So I hope that people enjoyed that.
I'm sure they did. I certainly did. Thank you, Fiona. That was beautiful. That was really lovely. Yeah, so we'll just close really today. Do you want to just share your website or how people can find out more about your work in the future? Or
yeah, at the moment I'm not working because I'm nursing my husband who's he's quite ill with cancer.
Yeah.
But I do have a website, so it's www.fionaagombar.co.uk. My book is still on sale, which is called Beat Petita Yoga, which is on Amazon, or you can get it from my website, or it's at www.yogamatters.com. I also have a video on sale, a DVD on sale at Yoga Matters, which I made with Sue Dell. Yeah, as I say, I'm not working at the moment, but I will be returning to write another book at some point. So, and I'm hoping maybe Francis and I might be doing some work.
Yeah, doing some interesting projects in the future. Yeah, so if you want to find out more about my work, it's at womenswellnesscircle.com and francisgoodall.com. So thank you for being with us today, and thank you for being with us, Fiona. And yeah, I will speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.